September 18th. Summer is over. A cool breeze rattles golden aspen leaves, and I have this one fleeting chance to do something big. The idea of backpacking Nolan's 14 became my main motivation in August, as I was returning to hiking after more than 2 months of recovery from shoulder surgery. It was an ambitious idea, but compelling enough to give me something to work toward. I completed a handful of scouting trips that offered tough training days and provided valuable insight into the route. Now in fall, with the first winter storms on the way, it was time to see how far that training and research could take me. I felt stronger than I had all summer, but was still deeply intimidated by the scope of the route. It was time to take the risk and go for it. All right, it's 6 a.m. exactly at the Shavano trailhead. About to get started on Nolan's 14. Here we go. My strategy was to go slow and steady. I planned for 5 days, each with around 9,000 feet of climbing. Feels good to be headed out with a backpack on, ready to just spend a few days out here in the woods, come what may. I bet that conserving energy through pacing would be my best shot at success. That was my mantra as I climbed up Shavano. But with an internal monologue filled with self-doubt, along with the strong winds and fresh snow up high, I couldn't shake the feeling of too little too late. Thankfully, the second peak on the route is an easy side trip from Shavano, though I was surprised by the amount of fresh snow on the shady north side of the ridge. Tabeguache was an easy summit tag that went quickly and helped my morale. Left the pack down at the saddle, which was a great idea. Cruising, feeling good. All right, the wind is ripping over that way, but that's where I'm going. Over to that saddle and down, and then up to Antero. The route between Tabeguache and Antero was one I had planned on scouting, but was not able to after being socked in on top of Shavano. Still, I enjoyed seeing this new terrain, and the exciting feeling of commitment that always comes with dropping into a different basin than the one I climbed up. I dropped down from a talus field onto a steep tundra slope toward treeline. Almost back down to the creek. Nice to be back in the trees, out of the wind a little bit. Walking through this pretty cool lateral moraine, all these natural rock walls. Kind of neat. I'm aiming for, gonna hit that road, take it up there, and then go up that gully just beyond those trees. I didn't linger too long in the Browns Creek Basin, but definitely enjoyed the feeling of solitude here, along with the fall colors. Tabeguache and Shavano behind me, climbing back up. Before long, I was climbing again, ascending a rocky drainage on the southern reaches of Mount Antero. The wind continued to howl, but the specifics of this area definitely piqued my interest. One of the things I'm thinking about out here is how feasible some of these routes would be for skiing. And this one is a pretty clear no. 2 big slopes on either side funneling right here. So this would be a spot to find an alternate route, I think. Not too bad right now, though. This curious little gully led me to an expansive plateau, where I finally joined the notorious Antero Road. Here, the illusion of solitude was broken by 4x4 traffic, as well as some bighorn sheep spotted along the way. I am just crawling. I've been at like 1 mile an hour most of the day. And thankfully, I'm on the road now, and the road becomes a trail. So the miles for the rest of the day should be faster. Just grinding it out. The summit of Antero felt like a good accomplishment. There's Shavano, Tabeguache, drop down, climb up this ridge, up to Antero. And I was ready to start my long descent of 5,000 feet over 7 miles of dirt road. I hoped the easier walking would make up for the punishingly slow pace I had kept up to this point. This is not the most exciting section of the route, but I'm happy for some easier miles here at the end of the day. And I'm feeling good because I got some peanut butter and Oreos, and can't ask for much more than that. The pale afternoon light and comfort of tree cover made the road walk more scenic than anticipated. Finished up the Antero road, now headed into Alpine. Gonna cross through here and climb just a couple miles up the start of the Princeton route for tomorrow. Get a bit of a head start. The well-graded trail headed north from Alpine was enjoyable, even after such a long first day, and the promise of camp raised my spirits. Nothing feels better, nothing feels more natural. This is just like such an amazing experience. Just being out here in the mountains, climbing these peaks, seeing the seasons change. So glad to be doing this. At the campsite, I caught up to Katie, who had started with me but kept a faster pace. We set out together to take on day 2, which would be more challenging but familiar terrain over Mount Princeton and Yale. All right, morning of day 2. Just climbed up 2,200 feet in a mile in the dark to get back up onto the south ridge of Mount Princeton. It's only been about 3 weeks since I was last up here, so it feels pretty familiar. And I'm gonna see if I can kind of maximize on the beta that we learned on that scouting trip. Reinvigorated by sleep and energized to be hiking with company, I was pleased that the climb up Mount Princeton's infamous South Ridge felt fun and relatively fast. Right, once more, dropping off the summit of Princeton, headed back down this big long loose ridge. The descent off Mount Princeton gave us a pretty hard time when we scouted it, and this time it was only slightly better. I guess dropping 1,500 feet in half a mile over loose talus is never going to feel too easy. Katie and I wondered how fast a true Nolan's run would have to go in this section. Thanks to that scouting trip, we were able to make quick work of the route below treeline, avoiding a couple minor bushwhacks that had tripped us up before. It's a real relief to have Princeton in the rear view. That descent is just nasty. And we're just cruising now, headed over to Yale. Gonna hop down to the Colorado Trail and follow that for a few miles. At this point, I felt locked in, at least mentally. Physically, I was finding that the low gear I hoped to fall into strategically was actually the only gear I had to choose from. Working hard, climbing up the Colorado Trail toward Mount Yale. It's just been a long, hot climb, but getting there. On the climb up Mount Yale, it became obvious that I needed to pick up my pace in order to keep us from descending the mountain in the dark. Unfortunately, I didn't have that in me. Climbing up the East Ridge, I deteriorated, feeling like I was underwater, struggling to move forward, to breathe, my heart racing, much more than it should have been. I was hydrated and fed and motivated, but my body just hit a wall in a way I've never experienced before. If I had set out to go until it didn't make sense anymore, committing to a nocturnal bushwhack on the far side of this mountain did not make sense. But it was too late to turn back now. Katie and I had decided to stick together, and we would need each other for the challenge ahead. We circled around the north side of Mount Yale, where our descent of the avalanche gully awaited. I now recognize this section to be the most difficult terrain anywhere on the Nolan's 14 route, and we would do it in total darkness. In the trees, we worked together to find the path of least resistance, which still meant climbing over blowdowns and slipping over steep vegetation for a nightmarish descent in the dark. Finally, we reached the creek, but had to search to find the right way across. We made it to camp at 10 p.m. It was obvious then that I could not continue at this pace, or continue to hold Katie back. We split up again, and I set out for 3 days of easier walking on the Colorado Trail, which parallels the high peaks on its way back to the fish hatchery where I had staged my car. I was still moving slow, but worse than that was a growing pain in my knee. A short downhill section ignited the pain even further, and I accepted that I had to scrap the Colorado Trail plan and just bail as quick as possible. I came to the junction of Frenchman Creek and limped my way slowly down that dirt road to reach the highway where I would hitch back to my car. In one sense, I fell far short of the stated goal, but I truly do feel the experience of working toward the goal was where the value lied. I learned a great deal from this project, with all of its complexities and challenges. It has changed the way I think about the mountains. My road to recovery continues, and I'll be back on the route before too long, I'm sure.